Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you tales of love, resilience, and the courage to follow your heart. Today's story takes us on a transformative journey of two individuals, Sophia and Daniel, who come from worlds of unimaginable wealth yet yearn for something real. Through unexpected twists, heartfelt connections, and moments of profound discovery, they prove that true love and authenticity triumph over all. Don't miss this inspiring tale of self-discovery and the power of genuine connection. Hit the subscribe button and join us as we dive into life stories to begin today's extraordinary journey. Sophia Parker had the kind of life most people could only dream of. At just 26 years old, she was the only child of Robert and Elizabeth Parker, two of the most influential figures in New York City. Robert, a shrewd businessman, had built a sprawling empire, while Elizabeth was celebrated for her philanthropic endeavors. Together, they formed a power couple who were admired and envied in equal measure. Sophia grew up in the lap of luxury. Her childhood was spent in a grand penthouse overlooking Central Park, surrounded by butlers, nannies, and the finest toys money could buy. Her teenage years were a whirlwind of private school galas, luxury vacations, and designer wardrobes. And yet, despite all the wealth and privilege, Sophia often felt as though she were living in a gilded cage. Outwardly, her life seemed perfect. Her friends adored her. Her social media accounts were filled with envious comments, and potential suitors vied for her attention. But beneath the surface, Sophia harbored a quiet dissatisfaction. Her so-called friends seemed more interested in the parties she hosted or the access she provided to her influential parents. The men she dated, they all seemed captivated by the Parker name rather than by her. Sophia longed for something real. She wanted relationships built on genuine connections, not on her last name or the balance of her family's bank account. Over time, her loneliness grew into a nagging ache that no designer dress or lavish event could soothe. One evening, at yet another dinner party filled with the same shallow conversations, Sophia found herself sitting next to Jonathan Green, a young hedge fund manager her father had introduced her to. Jonathan talked endlessly about his career, his expensive car, and his recent ski trip to Aspen. He never once asked about her dreams, her passions, or her thoughts. It was as though she were invisible beyond her status as Robert Parker's daughter. That night, as she stared at her reflection in her opulent bedroom, Sophia felt a wave of despair. The chandelier above her glittered with hundreds of crystals, casting rainbows across the room. But all she could see was the emptiness in her own eyes. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered to herself. "There has to be more to life than this." The next morning, she made a bold decision. Over breakfast in their expansive dining room, Sophia told her parents about her plan. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but her resolve was firm. "I need to leave the city for a while," she said, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "I need time to find myself. Away from all this." Her mother, Elizabeth, immediately protested. "Leave, Sophia. You're a young woman. The world outside is harsh and unforgiving. You don't need to go anywhere to find yourself. Everything you need is right here." But Sophia shook her head. "No, Mom. That's the problem. Everything here is tied to our family's name, to our wealth. No one sees me for who I really am. They see Parker Industries, Parker Charities, Parker Fortune. I want to know if I can live a life where none of that matters." Her father, Robert, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. His voice was measured, but there was a hint of concern in his eyes. "And what exactly do you plan to do, Sophia? Walk away from all of this? From your responsibilities?" Sophia turned to him, her voice soft but determined. "I'm not walking away forever, Dad. I need to know what it's like to live outside this bubble. To meet people who don't know my name, who don't care about my family. If I don't find what I'm looking for, I'll come back. I'll even meet the man you want me to marry." But I can't stay here. Not like this. Elizabeth looked to Robert, her expression pleading. Tell her this is a bad idea. Robert. She can't just go wandering off. It's dangerous. How will she survive without the life she's always known? But to Sophia's surprise, her father nodded slowly. If this is what you feel you need to do, Sophia, then I won't stop you. But promise me you'll be careful. The world isn't as kind as it may seem. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. But she blinked them away. Thank you, Dad. I promise I'll be careful. And so, with her father's reluctant blessing and her mother's worried gaze, Sophia began preparing for her journey. She packed a single suitcase, filling it with simple clothes and leaving behind her designer dresses and glittering jewelry. She wanted nothing that tied her to her life in New York. The next morning, as the city skyline faded in the distance, Sophia felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. For the first time in her life, she was stepping into the unknown, leaving behind the safety of her privileged world. Her destination was Maplewood, a small town she had chosen at random. It was far enough from the city to feel like a different world entirely, a place where no one would recognize her as Sophia Parker, the heiress. As the bus pulled into Maplewood, Sophia gazed out at the quiet streets lined with charming storefronts and cozy cafes. It was a stark contrast to the bustling chaos of New York, and she felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. For the first time in her life, Sophia was anonymous. No one here knew her story, her name, or her family. She was just another face in the crowd. And for now, that was exactly what she wanted. Sophia found a small one-bedroom apartment above a bakery. It was nothing like the penthouse she had grown up in, but it was warm and inviting. The scent of fresh bread wafted up each morning, and the simple furnishings reminded her of the life she was trying to embrace. The next step was finding a job. She couldn't rely on her family's wealth if she wanted this experience to be authentic. After days of searching, she came across Sally's Kitchen, a bustling diner on the corner of Main Street. It was a far cry from the gourmet restaurants she was used to, but the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. With her heart pounding, Sophia walked inside and asked to speak with the manager. Sally, a kind woman in her 50s with a ready smile, gave Sophia a once-over before nodding. We could use an extra set of hands. It's tough work, though. Are you sure you can handle it? Sophia smiled, her determination shining through. Yes, I can handle it. I'll do whatever it takes. And with that, Sophia's new life began. For the first time, she was living without the safety net of her family's wealth. And though the days were long and the work was hard, she felt a sense of freedom she had never known before. In Maplewood, she wasn't Sophia Parker, heiress to a fortune. She was just Sophia, a young woman searching for something real. Sophia's first day at Sally's Kitchen was a whirlwind of activity. From the moment she put on the plain white apron Sally handed her, she was plunged into a world of orders, coffee refills, and plates piled high with pancakes and bacon. The diner hummed with the rhythm of daily life, a mix of locals and travelers stopping in for a hearty meal. The simplicity of it all was both overwhelming and strangely comforting. Her hands trembled slightly as she carried her first tray of food to a table. But she forced herself to focus. The customers at Sally's weren't the suited businessmen or polished socialites she was used to in New York. They were truck drivers, construction workers, young families, and retirees, all with kind, unassuming smiles. Here, no one cared about her family name or her past. To them, she was just another waitress. The work was harder than Sophia had imagined. By the end of her first shift, her feet ached, and her arms felt like jelly from carrying heavy trays. Yet, as she wiped down tables and prepared to leave, she couldn't help but smile. For the first time in her life, she had earned something through her own effort, however small it might have seemed. Sally approached her as she hung up her apron. "You did well for your first day," she said, her voice warm. It's not easy work. But you'll get the hang of it. Thank you, Sophia replied, genuinely grateful. I didn't realize how tiring it would be. But it feels good. Sally raised an eyebrow, her curiosity evident. Not many people would say that. You're a bit of a mystery. You know, most folks who come to Maplewood are running to or from something. Sophia hesitated, unsure how much of herself she should reveal. Finally, she offered a small smile. I guess you could say I'm looking for a fresh start. Sally seemed satisfied with that and patted her shoulder. Well, this is as good a place as any to find one. In the weeks that followed, Sophia began to settle into her new routine. Her mornings were spent serving breakfast at the diner, where she quickly learned the names and orders of the regulars. There was Mr. Hargrove, who always ordered black coffee and a plain bagel, and the Johnson family, whose 3 young boys loved to argue over the last piece of bacon. Each day brought a sense of connection and belonging that Sophia had never felt before. Her evenings were quieter, spent in her modest apartment reading books she'd borrowed from the local library or strolling through Maplewood's peaceful streets. The simplicity of her new life was a stark contrast to the opulence she had left behind. But it brought her a sense of peace she hadn't realized she needed. It wasn't long before Sophia began to form friendships. The other waitresses at Sally's welcomed her into their circle, inviting her to join them for coffee after their shifts. Among them was Lisa, a sharp-witted single mother who could balance 3 plates in one hand while scolding her teenage son over the phone. Lisa quickly took Sophia under her wing, teaching her the diner's unspoken rules and sharing stories that made her laugh until her sides ached. You're a fast learner, Lisa said one afternoon as they cleaned tables. Though I've gotta say, you don't seem like the small-town type. You've got a way about you, polished. I guess. Like you belong somewhere fancier than Maplewood. Sophia froze for a moment, then forced a laugh. I think that's just from watching too many old movies. I've always admired that classic elegance. Lisa smirked but didn't press further. Sophia was grateful for that. She wasn't ready to share the truth, not yet. Her connection to Maplewood deepened as she became part of the community. She volunteered at the local food pantry on weekends, where she met people who shared their stories with her, stories of hardship, resilience, and hope. It was humbling and inspiring in equal measure. For the first time, she felt like she was contributing to something larger than herself, not just existing in the sheltered world of the elite. But not everything about her new life was easy. Sophia struggled with moments of doubt and loneliness, especially on quiet nights when the weight of her choices pressed heavily on her. There were times when she missed the comforts of her old life, the security, the familiarity, and, most of all, her parents. Though she knew they were only a phone call away, she resisted the urge to reach out. This was her journey, and she needed to face it alone. Still, amidst the challenges, there was a sense of growth. Each day taught Sophia something new about herself. She learned the value of hard work, the importance of genuine connections, and the beauty of finding joy in small, ordinary moments. One particularly busy evening at the diner, as Sophia served a table of rowdy teenagers, she found herself smiling despite the chaos. She realized that, for all its simplicity, her life in Maplewood was shaping her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was becoming someone she could respect, someone who didn't rely on wealth or privilege but on her own strength and character. Sophia had come to Maplewood to escape the shadow of her family's fortune. What she hadn't expected was to find herself in the process. This small town, with its quiet charm and unassuming people, was slowly teaching her the lessons she hadn't known she needed. And though she didn't yet know what the future held, for the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. 4 months. Sophia continued to settle into her new life in Maplewood. The simplicity of the town and her work at Sally's kitchen offered a sense of grounding she had never experienced before. She found herself laughing more, feeling a sense of freedom that was intoxicating. But as content as she was, A part of her longed for companionship, a real connection with someone who could see her for who she truly was. That was when Ryan entered her life. Ryan Walker was a handyman who often worked around the town. With his rugged good looks, easy smile, and kind demeanor, he quickly became a regular fixture in Sophia's world. He would often stop by the diner for lunch, joking with the waitresses and flashing his charming grin. Unlike the other men Sophia had known, Ryan seemed genuine. He asked her about her day, shared stories about his work, and made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in years. It wasn't long before Ryan began to linger a little longer at the counter, finding excuses to strike up conversations with Sophia. He'd ask about her favorite books, her thoughts on small-town life, and whether she'd ever been to the nearby lake. His attention felt different, uncomplicated, warm, and real. Against her better judgment, Sophia found herself drawn to him. One afternoon, Ryan invited her to join him for a walk by Maplewood's picturesque riverbank. "You've been working so hard," he said, his smile as inviting as ever. "You deserve a break." Sophia hesitated, a part of her wary of opening her heart. But as she looked into Ryan's earnest eyes, she found herself saying yes. Their walks became a regular occurrence, each one revealing new layers of who Ryan was. He spoke about his struggles growing up in a small town, his dreams of building his own carpentry business, and the joy he found in creating things with his hands. Sophia felt her walls begin to crumble. Ryan wasn't like the men she had known in New York. He was unpretentious, humble, and seemed to care for her in a way that felt refreshingly honest. But cracks began to form in the perfect image she had built around him. It started with small requests, Ryan borrowing a little cash for a tool he needed to replace, or asking her to spot him for lunch when he'd forgotten his wallet. At first, Sophia didn't think much of it. She was earning her own money now, and the amounts were small. Besides, Ryan had always been generous with his time and affection. She told herself it was no big deal. Yet, as the weeks passed, the requests grew more frequent. Ryan's explanations became more elaborate: a delayed paycheck, a family emergency, an unexpected expense. Sophia began to feel uneasy but struggled to confront him. She didn't want to believe that someone she cared for could take advantage of her. The truth came crashing down one quiet afternoon. Sophia had finished her shift at the diner and was walking home when she spotted Ryan standing by the hardware store. He was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones, but something about his body language stopped her in her tracks. She ducked behind a nearby tree, her heart pounding, and strained to hear his words. "Yeah, I've got her wrapped around my finger," Ryan said, his tone confident. "She doesn't suspect a thing. I'll get more out of her soon, just need to play it cool." Sophia felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The warmth and trust she had built with Ryan shattered in an instant. Her breath caught in her throat as the weight of his betrayal sank in. He hadn't cared for her, not really. He had seen her as an easy target, someone to manipulate for his own gain. Tears blurred her vision as she stepped out from behind the tree, her voice trembling with anger. "So, this is who you really are." Ryan turned, his eyes widening in surprise. "Sophia, wait. I can explain." "Explain what?" she demanded, her voice rising. "That you've been using me? That all of this was just a game to you?" He opened his mouth to respond, but the guilt on his face was enough to confirm everything she needed to know. Without another word, Sophia turned and walked away, her heart breaking with each step. She had trusted him, let herself believe in him, and he had used her just like the people she had run from in New York. That night, alone in her tiny apartment, Sophia let the tears fall. The betrayal cut deeper than she had anticipated, not just because of Ryan's lies but because it forced her to confront her own vulnerability. For all her efforts to escape her old life, she realized she was still carrying the same scars, the same fears of being seen as nothing more than a means to an end. But as the hours passed, her sorrow gave way to resolve. She wouldn't let Ryan's actions define her or her journey. She had come to Maplewood to find herself, to discover if she could build a life on her own terms. Ryan's betrayal was a painful setback, but it was also a reminder of why she had left New York in the first place. The next morning, Sophia packed her things. She couldn't stay in Maplewood, not after what had happened. The town, once a place of comfort and new beginnings, now felt tainted by Ryan's deception. She needed a fresh start. Somewhere even more remote, where no one would recognize her or take advantage of her again. As the bus pulled away from Maplewood, Sophia looked out the window, the town fading into the distance. Her heart was heavy, but her resolve was strong. She had learned a hard lesson about trust and vulnerability, but she wouldn't let it break her. Instead, she would carry it forward as a reminder of the strength she was discovering within herself. Her journey was far from over. If anything, it had just begun. Sophia's arrival in the quiet village of Clearwater felt like stepping into another world. Tucked away in the rolling hills of Wyoming, the village was a place where time seemed to move slower. The streets were lined with charming cottages, and the air carried the earthy scent of fresh rain. There were no glittering skylines or bustling crowds here, just the peaceful hum of small-town life. It was exactly what Sophia needed. The room she rented belonged to a kind widow named Mrs. Whitmore, who welcomed Sophia with warm tea and tales of the village. Clearwater's small, but it has a way of growing on you, she said, her eyes crinkling with kindness. Sophia nodded, grateful for the warmth and simplicity Mrs. Whitmore offered. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of her emotions after leaving Maplewood. Her first priority was finding work. With her savings dwindling, Sophia wanted to earn her keep and immerse herself in the rhythm of the village. As she wandered through the main street one afternoon, a handwritten sign in the window of Clearwater's small general store caught her eye, "Help wanted." Without hesitation, she stepped inside. The shopkeeper, Mr. Paul, was a middle-aged man with a friendly demeanor and an ever-present pair of glasses perched on his nose. After a brief interview, during which Sophia stuck to her story of being a young woman from a neighboring town looking to start fresh, Mr. Paul hired her on the spot. The job was simple: stocking shelves, helping customers, and keeping the place tidy, but it was enough. Working at the store allowed Sophia to become a part of Clearwater's close-knit community. She quickly learned the names and quirks of the regular customers. From Mrs. Green, who always bought her favorite peppermint tea, to the local farmers who stopped by for supplies and chatted about the weather. The pace was slower than at Sally's kitchen, but it suited her. Life in Clearwater gave her space to heal, to reflect, and to rebuild. And then she met Ethan. It happened on a sunny morning while Sophia was restocking the shelves. The bell above the store's door chimed, and she glanced up to see a tall man with a warm smile and a confident stride. Ethan Grayson was new to the village, a construction worker hired to assist with the renovation of Clearwater's historic church. He greeted Mr. Paul and the other customers with an easy familiarity that made him instantly likable. Sophia noticed him in quiet glances, captivated by his unassuming charm. Unlike the polished men she'd encountered in her old life or the shallow bravado of Ryan, Ethan exuded a steady, grounded energy. He wasn't flashy or overbearing, just a man who seemed comfortable in his own skin. Their first interaction was brief but memorable. Ethan had approached the counter with a toolbox in hand, searching for a specific type of drill bit. As Sophia rang up his purchase, he smiled at her, his hazel eyes crinkling at the corners. "You're new here, aren't you?" he asked casually. Sophia hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I guess you could say that. I've been in Clearwater for a few weeks." Ethan tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. "Well, welcome. It's a good place. People here take care of each other." "Thanks," she replied, feeling a strange warmth in his words. Over the weeks that followed, Ethan became a familiar presence in Sophia's life. He often stopped by the store after work, covered in dust but always wearing that easy smile. Their conversations grew longer, moving from casual pleasantries to more personal topics. Ethan shared stories about his childhood in Wyoming, his love for woodworking, and his dream of building a house with his own hands. Sophia found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't expected. She told him about her love of reading, her attempts at learning to bake, and her appreciation for the simple beauty of Clearwater. She avoided mentioning her past. But Ethan never pried. He seemed content to meet her where she was. Their friendship deepened into something more one crisp autumn evening. Sophia was walking home after her shift when she heard Ethan's voice calling her name. She turned to see him jogging toward her, his breath visible in the cool air. "I was hoping to catch you," he said, slightly out of breath. "There's this spot by the lake where the sunset is incredible. I thought you might want to see it." Sophia hesitated, her heart pounding. It had been so long since she'd allowed herself to trust someone. But something about Ethan felt safe, genuine. "I'd love to," she said softly. The walk to the lake was filled with easy conversation and laughter. When they arrived, the sight took Sophia's breath away. The water shimmered with hues of orange and pink, the reflection of the setting sun creating a painting-like scene. Ethan spread a blanket on the ground, and they sat side by side, watching the day give way to twilight. "This is my favorite place in Clearwater," Ethan said, his voice low. "It's peaceful. Helps me clear my head." Sophia nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "It's beautiful. I think I needed this." He turned to her, his expression gentle. "You seem like you're carrying a lot. Whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone." Sophia's chest tightened at his words. There was no judgment in his tone, only understanding. She glanced at him, her heart full of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, for the first time in months. Sophia felt a flicker of hope. Ethan was different. He wasn't trying to impress her or take advantage of her. He was simply offering her his presence, his kindness. And for Sophia, that was enough to begin trusting again. Sophia and Ethan's bond grew deeper with every passing day. Their friendship had blossomed into something more, though neither of them said it out loud. It was in the way they lingered when their hands brushed or how their eyes found each other in a room full of people. It was in the quiet moments by the lake or the easy laughter they shared over coffee. For Sophia, it felt like the first time in her life that love didn't come with conditions or ulterior motives. But as her feelings for Ethan deepened, so did her guilt. She hadn't told him the truth about who she was. Every time she thought about revealing her identity, fear stopped her. What if he saw her differently? What if he thought she was just another privileged heiress trying to escape her problems? Sophia had built a life in Clearwater where people valued her for her kindness, her hard work, and her spirit, not her last name. She wasn't ready to give that up. Not even for Ethan. What Sophia didn't know was that Ethan had a secret of his own. Ethan Grayson wasn't just a construction worker. He was Daniel Carter, a tech billionaire who had built a telecommunications empire in Silicon Valley. Like Sophia, Daniel had grown weary of the trappings of wealth and the constant expectations that came with it. His parents, socialites from San Francisco, had pushed him to meet Sophia Parker, the heiress to the Parker fortune, as part of their plans to merge their family's wealth and influence. But Daniel had resisted. He didn't want a marriage of convenience or strategy, he wanted something real. When the chance to oversee a telecommunications project in Clearwater came up, Daniel saw it as the perfect opportunity to escape. He adopted the name Ethan Grayson and left his empire behind, hoping to live simply for a while. He had no idea that the woman he was meant to meet, the elusive Sophia Parker, was living her own secret life just a few streets away. The truth began to unravel on a cold, clear evening. Sophia had just closed up the store and was walking home when she noticed a group of workers loading equipment onto a large truck in the village square. Among them was Ethan, giving instructions with a natural authority that seemed out of place for a construction worker. Curious, she approached one of the men. "What's going on?" she asked. The man glanced at her, then nodded toward Ethan. "We're wrapping up the project. Mr. Carter wanted to oversee the final stages personally." Sophia froze. "Mr. Carter," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The worker nodded. "Yeah. Daniel Carter. He's the owner of the company. Surprised he's been working here in person. Most billionaires don't get their hands dirty." The words hit Sophia like a thunderbolt. Ethan was Daniel Carter, the tech billionaire? Her mind raced as she pieced together the truth. His ease with the workers, the subtle hints he'd dropped about a life beyond Clearwater, it all made sense now. He had been hiding just as much as she had. She stood there, stunned, until Ethan, Daniel, noticed her. His expression shifted from surprise to concern as he approached her. "Sophia," he began, his voice gentle. "I can explain. You're Daniel Carter," she said, the words trembling on her lips. "You've been lying to me." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I wasn't lying. I needed to get away from everything for a while. I didn't want people to see me as a billionaire or a tech mogul. I wanted to be just Ethan." "And what about me?" Sophia asked, her voice breaking. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? Or were you planning to leave without saying anything?" "I was going to tell you," Daniel said earnestly. "I just didn't know how." "Sophia, I care about you more than I've cared about anyone in a long time. I didn't want my past to ruin what we have." Sophia's emotions warred within her. Anger, hurt, and understanding all collided in her chest. She had come to Clearwater to escape her own identity, to find a version of herself untainted by wealth and privilege. And now, she was standing face to face with someone who had done the exact same thing. "You don't understand," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "I've been hiding too." Daniel's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Taking a deep breath, Sophia met his gaze. "I'm Sophia Parker, the daughter of Robert Parker. The same Sophia Parker your parents wanted you to meet." Daniel's eyes widened, the realization sinking in. You're the Sophia Parker?" She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I came here to get away from all of it, the expectations, the pressure, the people who only saw me for my family's name. I wanted to find out who I was without all of that. And now we've both been hiding." Daniel finished, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of their secrets hanging between them. Then, Daniel stepped closer, his expression softening. "Maybe we were both running for the same reason. Maybe we needed to find each other like this, not as Daniel Carter and Sophia Parker, but as Ethan and Sophia." Sophia looked at him, her heart pounding. She wanted to believe him, to trust that what they had was real despite the lies and half-truths. Slowly, she nodded. "Maybe you're right." Daniel smiled, relief washing over his face. "Then let's stop hiding. Let's figure this out together." As he reached for her hand, Sophia felt a flicker of hope. They had both been running from their pasts. But maybe, just maybe, they had found a future worth staying for. Sophia and Daniel's shared revelations marked a turning point in their relationship. The walls they had built around themselves began to crumble, replaced by a fragile but genuine honesty. For the first time, they were seeing each other fully, not as the wealthy heirs of empires, but as two people who had struggled to find meaning and love beyond their privilege. The days that followed were filled with long conversations. They sat by the lake, their favorite spot in Clearwater, and talked late into the night. Sophia shared stories of her childhood in New York City, the pressure of living up to her parents' expectations, and the loneliness that had driven her to leave it all behind. Daniel spoke of his years building his tech empire, the relentless demands of success, and the weight of being seen as nothing more than a billionaire. Their stories mirrored each other in ways that surprised them both. They had each lived lives filled with luxury but devoid of authenticity, always searching for something deeper. That shared understanding became the foundation of their connection, turning their fragile trust into something unshakable. But their newfound closeness was soon tested. Word of their relationship and their true identities began to spread through Clearwater. The quiet village buzzed with gossip, the locals both amazed and skeptical. Some admired Sophia and Daniel for their courage to step away from their privileged lives, while others whispered doubts about their intentions. For a community that prided itself on simplicity, the presence of two billionaires was both exciting and unsettling. The news eventually reached Daniel's parents in San Francisco and Sophia's parents in New York. Both families were shocked by the revelations and had very different reactions. Sophia's mother, Elizabeth, was thrilled that her daughter had found love with someone they already respected and admired. "It's like fate," she gushed during a phone call. "Daniel is exactly the kind of man we always hoped you'd meet." Sophia wasn't so sure. She had left New York to escape those very expectations, and the idea of fulfilling them, even unintentionally, left her feeling conflicted. Daniel's parents, on the other hand, were less welcoming. His mother, Victoria Carter, called him in a huff, her voice sharp with disapproval. "What were you thinking, Daniel? Hiding in some village and pretending to be a laborer? You're meant for more than this, Mom." Daniel replied calmly, "I'm the same person I've always been. If you can't see that, then you're the one missing the point. And this girl, Sophia." Victoria continued, ignoring his protest. "How can you be sure she's not using you? After all, her family is." "Stop," Daniel interrupted, his tone firm. "You have no idea who she is. She's not using me, and I love her." The declaration silenced his mother, but Daniel could tell that she wasn't convinced. He sighed, knowing that earning their approval would take time if it ever happened at all. Sophia and Daniel decided to face their families together. They returned to New York for a charity gala that the Parker family had been planning for months. It was a high-profile event, filled with the city's elite and buzzing with reporters eager for a glimpse of the heiress who had disappeared and the billionaire who had chosen to live simply. The night of the gala, Sophia felt a mix of nerves and resolve as she stepped into the grand ballroom on Daniel's arm. The room fell silent for a moment as guests turned to look at them, their whispers filling the air like the hum of a beehive. She held her head high, her confidence bolstered by Daniel's steady presence beside her. Her parents greeted them warmly, but it wasn't long before Victoria Carter approached. Her expression guarded. "Sophia," she said, her tone polite but distant. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Sophia smiled, determined not to let the tension get to her. "Thank you, Mrs. Carter. I've heard a lot about you." "And I about you," Victoria replied, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You've certainly made an impression." The conversation was interrupted by the event's host, who invited the Parkers and Carters on stage to acknowledge their contributions to the evening's cause. As the families stood together, Sophia felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about charity, it was a public acknowledgement of her and Daniel's relationship. A statement to the world that they were standing together. When it was her turn to speak, Sophia took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Tonight is about more than raising funds or celebrating our family's legacies," she began, her voice steady. "It's about recognizing that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or influence. It's found in the connections we build, the love we share, and the courage to be true to ourselves." Her words were met with applause, and as she stepped back, Daniel reached for her hand, his eyes filled with pride. In that moment, Sophia knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The gala was a turning point, though there were still whispers and doubts. Both families began to see the depth of Sophia and Daniel's bond. It wasn't about their fortunes or their status, it was about two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way and refused to let anything stand in their way. A few months later, Sophia and Daniel stood hand in hand at their wedding. The ceremony was simple and elegant, held outdoors under a canopy of trees. Surrounded by family and friends, they exchanged vows that spoke not of wealth or power, but of love, trust, and the shared journey that had brought them to this moment. As they kissed to seal their union, the crowd erupted into cheers. Sophia looked at Daniel, her heart full. They had both spent years searching for something real. And now they had found it, not in the riches they had inherited, but in each other. Their story wasn't just one of love, it was a testament to the power of authenticity and the courage to follow one's heart. Together, they had proven that true happiness doesn't come from what you have, but from who you choose to share it with. As Sophia and Daniel walked hand in hand through the meadow after their wedding, the setting sun cast a golden glow over the horizon. Their journey had been far from easy, but it was the challenges and lessons along the way that made their love stronger. They had discovered that the most valuable treasures in life were not found in riches or status but in the authenticity of their hearts and the bonds they created. Their story wasn't just about romance, it was about growth, courage, and the power of stepping beyond societal expectations to find what truly matters. They had each taken a leap of faith, leaving behind the weight of their pasts, only to find something far more meaningful, each other. As they shared a quiet moment together, Sophia turned to Daniel, her eyes shimmering with happiness. "I never imagined I'd find someone who understands me so completely," she said softly. Daniel smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And I never imagined I'd find a love so real. Thank you for being brave enough to take this journey with me." With their hands intertwined and their hearts full, they looked ahead to the future not as heirs to empires, but as partners ready to embrace life's adventures together. Their story is a reminder that love isn't about where you come from or what you have, it's about who you are and how you choose to live. If you enjoyed this heartfelt journey of love, growth, and self-discovery, don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring tales. Stay tuned for our next video, where we continue to explore the beauty and resilience of the human spirit.